Hello, I'm Jo, one of your mentors on understanding language, learning and teaching. And I'm bringing you the week 2 video review from a very rainy and windy Southampton this week. I'm just going to quickly recap the main topics that we've been talking about and highlight a few of the conversations that I've found interesting this week. I have to keep this video short, so I am only going to be able to mention a few of them. Right, so the step with the most comments this week is step 2.2, about classrooms as communities of practice. So that's about the social aspects of language learning and the roles that participants in the small community that the language classroom is, the roles that participants play. In the pinned conversation started by Elena about comparison and competitiveness in the language classroom, I really liked Vusa's comment that you should never feel ashamed of improving yourself. He says, never feel ashamed of improving yourself as long as you've not insulted anyone or brought harm to anyone. So rather than feeling embarrassed that your performance is perhaps not as good as someone else's, as a learner, you should be proud of yourself for trying. And I think that could be a good reminder for anyone who's following these course materials but not joining in the discussions. And of course, you have every right to remain quiet if you prefer to just learn from what everyone else is saying. But if you're hesitating and you have a question that you want to ask or an experience that you want to share, but you're not posting it because you're worried that your English isn't quite good enough, please put those doubts aside and comment, because we can only answer your questions or help you develop your thinking and your learning further if we know what you're thinking. So please join in and don't be afraid of making mistakes with your English, or don't be afraid that your contributions are not as good as somebody else's. Step 2.3 compares more traditional language learning or class. Let's try that again. Step 2.3 compares traditional classroom-based language learning with more naturalistic learning, and Willem sums up very eloquently why language learners benefit from both. I think teachers often feel they don't give their learners enough communicative practice or opportunities to use the language more spontaneously and naturalistically. And that's why we focus next on 2 particular communicative approaches to language teaching and learning: task-based learning and teaching and content and language integrated learning. We don't want to suggest that these are the only approaches you should be using or that these are the best methods to use. A lot of people in their comments have pointed out that different things work in different situations, different approaches work better with different learners, and we would totally agree with that. But we think that these approaches offer a lot of ideas that you can perhaps embed into your teaching and combine with other approaches to provide more opportunities for language use, not just language study, if that's something that you feel your teaching would benefit from. And probably my favourite comment of the week this week is on step 2.11. Rajesh writes about planning for task-based learning, and I'm going to quote from his comment. He says, "Sometimes it may not produce the expected results, but in the long term it produces results." And I think this is a very powerful idea. I can remember various occasions in my teaching when a task has failed to get learners producing a particular language form that I hoped it would, but it has actually led to some other learning for both learners and for me as the teacher, which has perhaps led me to rethink how I plan for them and what I teach. So yeah, that was great. There have been lots of contributions from people sharing their experiences and ideas about how CLIL or something similar to content and language integrated learning works in their own contexts, which is interesting and thought-provoking. I liked Serena's description of how she integrates content from her colleagues' history lessons in her English teaching. As with task-based learning and teaching, it might not always be possible or even desirable to adopt this as the main approach or the only approach, but I do think when you read Serena's comment and other ideas that people are sharing, there are perhaps some ideas that you could embed and do occasional CLIL type activities that would help to motivate your learners perhaps. So my time's pretty much up. As I said, I can only mention a few of the comments and conversations that I've noticed. If you've noticed something that you think was really interesting that I haven't mentioned, or if you've taken something from somebody else's contribution that you think you'll use in your own learning or your own teaching, why not comment on it on this step or on the following step where you're asked to reflect on your learning for the week. Draw other people's attention to it, link to it if you like. I'll try to remember to post a hint as to how you can link to individual comments in case you're not sure how to do that. Next week is all about technology and online learning, and as we're all here engaging in online learning right now, and some of us also are engaged in supporting the learning of others online, that should be a topic that is hopefully interesting to everyone. So I look forward to the discussions next week. Bye for now.